Thank you.
Sorry, I meant to start that earlier. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't know it was going to do that.
No problem. The first edition that's going to be built is going to start at $113,000, and that's all they're going to make at the beginning, but it will come down in price over time. It will be available with 2 or 3 drive motors and will be in showrooms, according to GM, by autumn of 2021. I'm not sure if that's actually going to come to pass. Here's what it looks like. Removable roof. This thing is going to be a hoot to drive. A lot of people are very interested in this, but again, it kind of spreads the impression that electric vehicles are a wealthy person's car, and that's something that I'm trying to change out there and explain to people that there are less expensive vehicles. The first pickup truck to the market will probably be the Lordstown Endurance. It is going to go into production if everything continues to move forward in September. So within 2 months at GM's old Lordstown plant that they shut down in Lordstown, Ohio, they are building the testing prototypes. I think they're building 57 of them all in all, and there are going to be beta versions of the truck, not full production models, but it'll be used for crash testing and things like that. It is based on a traditional General Motors crew cab pickup. I've sat inside one of these, and like we mentioned earlier, I sold Chevrolet vehicles for 6 years, focused on EVs, but to make a living, you got to sell everything they make. And if you're familiar with a crew cab General Motors truck, you'll be familiar with this as soon as you get into it, although the dashboard obviously has a lot of cool displays. 250-mile range on a charge, 6,000-pound towing capacity, and it'll start at $52,000. Now, I sold crew cab Chevrolets up to $72,000. So this is competitive with the ICE vehicles that are out there. It is all-wheel drive, and it has the electric motors in the hubs, in the wheel hubs. And production, as I mentioned, starts this September. Lordstown has had some problems with short sellers driving the stock price down. They recently announced that they may not have enough money to go into production. So they are looking for additional funding, but they may start with as few as 1,000 vehicles a year. This is what it looks like in the upper right picture. You can see the hub motor, and it's still a liquid cooled battery pack, liquid cooled motor. But with just 10 bolts, you can take the wheel off the car, which includes the motor, and disconnects it from the cooling system. And as I mentioned, these are photographs that I took when I saw one in person up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was touring the state of Texas. Very impressive vehicle. Of course, everybody knows the Tesla Cybertruck. The new factory is under construction right now in Austin, Texas, and will go in online probably before the end of this year. It'll be available single, dual, and tri-motor drives. It has full self-driving available that cost an additional $10,000. Bulletproof windows, stainless steel body panels, 250 or more miles of range per charge, up to 500 miles of range, depending on the battery size and the drive type you select. It'll have 14,000-pound towing capacity, and will start at $40,000, $50,000, and $70,000 again, depending on the battery and drive type you select. Its planned production start is this year, with deliveries starting early next year. A lot of people are put off by the design. I think this is one of the coolest. I've never wanted a pickup truck in my life, although I do believe pickups are the big tipping point for electric vehicle adoption. But this one has really caught my eye, and I really liked it. Another very popular one that has over 100,000 orders already placed is the Rivian R1T. The T is for truck or pickup. It is being built at a former Mitsubishi plant in Normal, Illinois. Quad motor drive, 11,000 pounds of towing capacity, 300 or 400 mile range on a charge, depending on battery size. That 400-mile range adds an additional $10,000 to the price. They'll start at $68,000 and $75,000, depending on the battery size and capabilities in the interior design. And they're planning to build an adventure charging network. In fact, in the state of Colorado, they have already signed with all the state parks to put in chargers. Unfortunately, the chargers will be strictly for Rivian vehicles, and planned production is December of this year. So again, these trucks are coming out soon. This one has one really cool feature. You may be able to make it out in that upper right picture, but it's they've got a storage tunnel between the bed and the back of the cab. And in this case, a kitchen, an electric kitchen pulls out from there. It's got a cooktop. Really cool if you're wanting to do some camping with your truck. They're also going to come out with an SUV, the R1S, S for SUV, again, made at the same plant. It'll have quad motor drive with a 5 or 7 seat interior. It'll have 7,700 pounds of towing capacity and a 3+ foot wading depth. So it can go through deep water without an issue. 300-mile range on a charge. Starting price will be $70 and $78, depending on which package you select. And again, they're doing that adventure network out at the parks. And it is going to start production this year as well in December, with deliveries next year. The Chevrolet Bolt EUV, not the EV that you may be familiar with, but the EUV is debuting, and they are in the showrooms now. It is 6 inches longer than the Bolt EV and has 3 inches of more legroom in the second row and has a 3-inch longer wheelbase. The interior is vastly improved over the first generation Bolt EV. And by the way, there is a new version of the Bolt EV as well that has similar styling to the EUV. It will be the first Chevrolet to offer the Super Cruise that up until now has only been available on Cadillacs. And this is the General Motors self-driving system. If you haven't read the book Autonomy, about the development of autonomous systems, it was actually written by a former vice president of General Motors. General Motors ended up being the company that funded the winner of a DARPA project for autonomous driving. So GM has some pretty deep experience in the self-driving world. 250+ miles of range. It starts at only $34,000. Of course, they don't get the $7,500 federal income tax credit, as I mentioned earlier. So GM's not stupid. They're discounting the vehicle down to $34,000 to be competitive with other brands. They are the first Chevrolet EV or plug-in hybrid to ever offer a sunroof, and adaptive cruise control is available on it. And as I mentioned, it is available now. And this is what it looks like. They really updated the styling that was on the original Bolt EV. And the interior actually does not look like the photograph in the upper right corner. The one I saw in person is much more like a traditional vehicle with the black leather dashboard. They've gotten rid of a lot of the plastic that people were complaining about on that vehicle. Now, in the three-wheeled world, the Aptera is out there. They have not gone into production yet. It's a three-wheeled vehicle with 2 seats and a big storage area behind. They claim that you can put a surfboard in the back. It looks pretty small, so I'll have to see that in real life to know for sure. It is incredibly aerodynamic and is available with front and all-wheel drive. It has solar panels or solar cells embedded in the body panels, and in complete sunlight, they claim it could add up to 40 miles of range per day. It is very light, having a 100% composite body. 500 miles of range per hour of charging with DC fast charging, and the longest range version has a 1,000-mile range per charge. It'll list for $45,000. There's one with 600 miles of range per charge at 35 and 400 miles at 30. And planned production is supposed to begin this year. It looks like they're all going to be hand built, so I think it's going to be very small volumes in the beginning. Here's what it looks like. They've got a couple of kayaks hanging out the back of that one, but really interesting looking design. I'm looking forward to seeing one of those in person. One of my favorites, my wife and I are, I'm retired. My wife is still working, but she'll retire before long. We want to do a lot more camping. So the Volkswagen ID Buzz is currently just a concept vehicle, but they're claiming it will actually go into production in 2022 in Europe, and will be delivering to the United States in 2023. If you remember the old hippie Volkswagen buses from the 60s, this is reminiscent of this, but with a very modernized exterior. Full self-driving is planned, up to 7 seats inside of it. 30 minutes to charge to 80% of the range on DC fast charging. That range is 300 miles. It has a 111 kilowatt hour battery pack. We do not know what the starting price is going to be yet. but I really love this. This is a vehicle that may be my next electric vehicle. Another one is the Canoe lifestyle vehicle. Again, something that we could use for camping. It is rear wheel drive and has an optional all wheel drive. It will be an autonomously driven vehicle, or will have the autonomous capability. Again, up to 7-seat interior, 28 minutes to charge, 80% of range with DC fast charging, 250 miles of range per charge with a top speed of 125 miles per hour. It will start at $33,000. Originally, this was going to be sold as a subscription vehicle in California only. And they've decided to postpone subscriptions for now and go to a direct sales model like everybody else does. Planned production will start next year in Oklahoma. And the Oklahoma governor had tried to coax Tesla into building their plant there. Failing at that, he was successful in getting a Canoe out there. They have already announced a preliminary design for a pickup truck. And just recently, spy photos were taken of a sports coupe that they're going to come out with. All of their vehicles have these headlights like you're seeing on this one. So that's kind of one of their trademarks. The roof of it's glass, and the interior in the back can actually be set up to be more like a living room than an SUV. You don't have to have that middle row. You have a wraparound couch basically in the back of the car. Now, Jeep has announced that they're going to come out with something that they're calling the Magneto. This is a very early concept vehicle. It was unveiled just, actually, it was about 2 months ago now, and it's based on the Wrangler, and it's going to have a transmission. The concept version has a manual transmission, which is kind of odd for an EV, but it's probably, in this case, the prototype is a retrofitted gas Jeep. It has a skateboard battery layout that's not really practical for off-road, but they also have the plan is to have 4 battery packs to have better weight balance, and they're going to distribute those throughout the vehicle, as well as 2 12-volt batteries. And it is at least 4 years from production. And you can see it looks like a typical Jeep Wrangler. Now, the skateboard designs for EVs, this is becoming very popular, and some companies that have no intention of actually creating a vehicle are creating skateboards to be used by OEMs that are developing electric vehicles. It's a flat platform that contains the batteries, motors, cooling, and controls. It allows flexibility for very quick time to market for new vehicle designs. So once you've got a certain size set up as a skateboard, you can put different chassis on top of that, allowing you to roll out vehicles very quickly. It will have a very low center of gravity, even compared to other EVs today. The motors will be in the wheels usually and are very fast to swap if they get damaged. The original skateboard design actually was done by General Motors back in the 1990s by a student engineer who had come over from Africa. So that, again, GM has a lot of depth all the way back to the EV1 in the 1990s. Several companies are planning to offer skateboard chassis as a new vehicle basis. And like I said, they're going to offer these to multiple OEMs or manufacturers. Here's several skateboards that are out there. The bottom right one there is from a company, they call it R3. And the upper one is the skateboard that is used in the pickup that Lordstown is coming out with, hopefully this September. Some links for you to check out. My YouTube channel is the EVangelist Buzz. My website is the ev-angelist.com. A religious person already got evangelist. My Facebook page is Buzz Smith, the EVangelist. And if you do want to join TechCetra, as I mentioned earlier, that is txetra.org, and it's free for you to join. Evolve Houston, you guys are probably all familiar with. I've got their website on here. And if you do search for incentives and you want to stay up to date on those, Plug-in America has an excellent incentive page. If you go to the main pluginamerica.com page, and scroll down a little bit, you'll see, are there any incentives in my area? Click on that, click on a map showing where you live, what the state you live in, and it'll show you not just the state incentives and federal incentives, but in a lot of cases, electric utility discounts that are available to you, things like that. EV trip planning apps and websites that I like. I use PlugShare quite a bit for planning cross-country routes. A newer one that has recently come out, a Better Route Planner, is interesting as well. And I highly recommend join Facebook groups, especially if you're new to EVs. You can ask the most esoteric question at 3 in the morning, and the EV community is so supportive of each other. You'll probably have 10 answers within the first hour. And several groups that I really like, Texas Electric Vehicle Owners. If you're a Chevy Volt owner, the Texas Chevy Volt Owners is a great supportive group. The Electric Vehicle Association of North America, Drive Electric America, Houston Electric Auto Association, your own group, has a Facebook page. So definitely check to see if there's a group for your EV in particular. There are a lot of them out there. The Volkswagen ID4, very, very new to the market, already has a Facebook group where people are sharing information. Well, that's my presentation, guys. And unfortunately, I don't know how to stop sharing screens. I'll either need some help or one of you guys will have to take over again.
Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. I can
There we go.
do it on here. There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much, Buzz. It is so exciting, all the different things that you've been letting us know about. I mean, everything from the technical details of the Lordstown vehicle having the hub motors up through what's happening all over. And of course, those links are really helpful as well for lots of folks. So that's real good. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to now have some question and answer from folks here. All right, Robert?
You say you're the EV evangelist, okay. Are you also the EV prophet? Where do you see the world of EVs in the next just 5 years?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last of that.
Okay, if you're going to play the prophet, where do you see the world of EVs in the next 5 years? Not even 10 years, just 5 years.
Did that come through? So let me repeat the question. Yeah. So it's great that you're the EV evangelist. We're wondering if you're also the EV prophet. So telling us what's going to happen in the future.
Well, the only thing that I can really tell you as far as prophecy is based on my vehicle sales. I worked for the largest Chevy dealership in the world, and 60% of everything that we sold was pickup trucks. And so a lot of people have been turned off by the idea of EVs because they think of them as Canoe boxes. But during the Houston Auto Show one evening when I was on the floor, we actually did a live webcast showing the Ford Lightning debut that Ford did a webcast. You know, we were showing it live as they were broadcasting it. Well, the next day I was standing looking at the display. I can't remember what was on it. And a gentleman just walked up and stood next to me. And I don't know why he was confiding in me, but he said, you know, I've never liked EVs. I'm a pickup truck driver. But after seeing that Ford announcement last night, I'm pretty sure my next truck will be electric. So this is a key moment of change. This is what is going to drive sudden mass adoption of EVs, is when the trucks and SUVs come out, because that's the form factor a lot of people are looking for. And it's why they've shied away from EVs.
Yeah, personally, I've also had friends mentioning that they're just waiting for the EV pickup trucks, this being Texas.
And by the way, Chevrolet has announced a Silverado as well. GMC will handle the Hummer, but Chevrolet is going to come out with an electric Silverado. They can't just let Ford have everything.
Yeah. Okay. Adam?
I had a question on the Tesla Cybertruck. I don't need fast acceleration. I don't need lots of towing, but I do need lots of miles. Can you get the single motor rear wheel drive, but get the largest battery pack with that?
Okay, so Adam is particularly concerned about range. He's interested in the Cybertruck. He's wondering, can you get the simple basic model that's one motor, but with the really large battery pack?
I have not seen the complete configurator for the Tesla Cybertruck yet. I think things are still a little bit in flux. Everything with Tesla kind of changes up until the last minute when the trucks are actually going through, or their vehicles are actually going through the assembly line. So I don't have the answer to that just yet, but it would shock me. Well, no pun intended. It would be amazing to me if Tesla didn't offer longer range without having to upgrade other things to like 4-wheel drive.
All right, so we'll see what's possible. Okay. So yes.
What is the skateboard for?
So could you explain the skateboard a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, up until now, a lot of the OEMs have been more or less just taking existing gasoline vehicles and throwing out the motor and or the engine and putting an electric motor in its place. If you take a look at, say, the Chevrolet Bolt EV, the Kia Niro, the Hyundai Kona, they all are basically built on the idea of the previous generation crossovers. So the low center of gravity is just because the battery pack is under the car, but under the hood, they actually have a radiator. They've got the cooling system, they've got the electric motor and the other electric components. And the skateboard idea changes all that. So the electric motors are down in the wheels. The battery pack and its cooling system are all, like a skateboard underneath the car. And so that's where you'll see, like the Mustang, if you guys really took a close look at it over there, most of the area under the hood is a frunk, like a Tesla Model S would have. Not all of it, there is some motor components and stuff in there. But as you migrate to the skateboard, center of gravity becomes much lower. So much better handling on the vehicles, much easier maintenance on the vehicles because they just lift it up on a lift and everything's right there that they need to get to. So this is a trend that's going to continue in the market. Tesla's vehicles are already skateboards. That's why they have the huge frunk up front and axle mounted motors. But I think this is going to be a trend we're going to see happen more and more as the OEMs get away from doing things the same old way they've done it for the last 100 years and start realizing that they've got a clean slate they can start with electric vehicle design. You don't have to, go down the same old roads as far as design.
Okay, good. And for folks that are not familiar with it, Buzz was using the term frunk, which is a shortening of front and trunk. So because you don't need the space necessarily for an engine in the front, some designs like the Bolt still take the space under the front hood and use it for mechanicals. But a lot of the different designs will actually give you not only a trunk space in the rear of the vehicle, but trunk space under the front hood. And that it just increases your cargo capabilities because most all the mechanicals for the vehicle are down in that skateboard. And so by putting them under the car.
Since the storage area will be in the front, in the case of a pickup truck, for instance, when you go to the football game, are you still going to call it tailgating? I'm not really sure anymore.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, good question.
Yeah. So with the new administration and the emphasis on the green deal and everything, are we expecting more incentives to come forward?
So what do you think might happen in the way of new incentives, considering what's happening with the administration in Washington?
Actually, there's some great news there. One of the complaints I've always had about the incentive program, especially being on the sales side of things, was I had, say, retirees come in that wanted to buy an electric vehicle, and they ended up having to lease it because they couldn't get the federal income tax credit because their income level was too low, and they didn't allow you to roll over any balance to the next year. So the debate in Washington now is, do they make it a point of sale discount supported by federal dollars, or do they allow you to roll over any unused amount of the income tax credit to future tax years, which would allow lower income people to be able to get into the electric vehicle market? There is some push in Washington to maybe scale down the amount of the tax credit if you get a super expensive electric vehicle. If you can afford a $130,000 electric vehicle, do you really need a $7,500 tax credit, or should that go to somebody at a lower income level? So that debate's going on. And the other one is that the original rebate or tax incentive was capped at 200,000 vehicles. It would start phasing out once a manufacturer had made 200,000 vehicles and sold them. Well, General Motors, is Chevrolet, Buick, General or GMC, they've got several brands, but now none of those brands can get the income tax credit, and neither can Tesla. And these are the two companies that pioneered electric vehicles in the United States, the current modern electric vehicles, and they're American companies. So now they are at an extreme disadvantage to the European and Asian companies that are coming along. And I think that's really opened some eyes in Washington. They realize they messed up, and so they do want to redo that. It is part of the infrastructure plan. So it just really right now it's in negotiations. I would highly recommend reach out to your senators, reach out to your representatives, let them know that you support continuing the incentive and increasing that ceiling so that we're no longer hurting American manufacturers that pioneered the industry.
So a follow-up,
Yeah.
should we hold on and not buy right now because possible incentives coming up, or?
So what is your recommendation? Should someone wait for possible incentives or jump in now?
Well, that's a really good question. In the case of Tesla, you may want to wait. In the case of General Motors, they're discounting their vehicles to make up for that $7,500 loss. And in fact, if you are thinking about stepping into the electric vehicle world and you're interested in the GM or the Chevrolet Bolt EV, the really important thing is it went through a complete redesign in 2022, and there are still 2020 and 2021 models on the dealership properties that they are desperate to get rid of because the 2022s have started shipping and they're a complete redesign. And people like the look of the new ones. So they're worried that they're going to be stuck with these vehicles. So you can get some really good deals. You can really negotiate on those vehicles. If the form factor of a small crossover is something you're interested in, I wouldn't wait at all. I would go down to a Chevy dealer, test drive one of those things and potentially grab one.
Okay, so more questions. And our folks online, of course, are welcome to ask questions as well. So with regards, something you made me think of there with regards to the older Bolt design, what is the status of the recall that had been put out? I know that they had done a temporary range reduction on the original Bolt. So since they've come out with a redesign, that might not apply to the newer one, but does that still apply to the older one, or have they resolved that?
Well, in fact, it didn't even apply to the 2020 model. It was only the 2016 through 2019s that were affected. They came up with a software fix for it. So it was about 30 to 45 minutes at the dealership to get the software fix. I've had friends that have already had it done. So the recall is resolved. Although there was a news story I saw today, Chevy Bolt EV caught fire in somebody's driveway. And GM's investigating, but we don't know, what caused that one. So I don't know if there will be another recall or if they've actually resolved the problem and this is just a fluke. Whenever I get talking to people about gas cars, anytime a Tesla catches fire, it's on the front of every web page and magazine out there. It's great clickbait if you're selling advertising, to get people to come to your website because you've got the big crisis Tesla story. But the fact of the matter is, in the United States, every year, 200,000 gasoline powered vehicles catch fire. So, when anybody brings that up with me, I throw that statistic at them, and it's really not. I charged a Bolt EV in my driveway before a long road trip. I filled it up to 100% and I had no worries at all. I knew it was going to be okay.
Yeah, that's always something. And Robert, our vice president, always likes to use the term barbecue.
Yeah, my clean diesel, my VW clean diesel had a barbecue a few years ago.
Yeah. So as you say, it doesn't hit the news because it happens so much, but there are many, many gasoline cars and diesel cars that catch on fire every year, burned to a crisp.
Yeah, White's dog.
Right. And just one other thing, if I can put in a plug for all of our national clubs. If someone is thinking about buying a used or an older EV, ask other club members. In particular, for example, we're here in a hot climate, and the original Leaf owners found that the story of those original Leaf batteries was not optimal in hot climates. So those batteries being air cooled, they did a lot better in cooler climates. So, and you can see some of these original Leafs now, and I know some of our informed members have bought them for like $6,000 or something.
there's a reason why they're selling at low prices, because you probably will have a low range, which if that meets your needs, then it's the perfect car for you to buy. But I just like to say, talk to other club members, because everybody's happy to share stories or tell you somebody that they know might be able to give you some info. And that way you can really know about maybe one of the older models, if it'll meet your needs or not. We're all seeing the technology advance so quickly that that's one thing that folks should be aware of. So
I got a related
Yeah.
question, because I have that first generation Leaf.
right.
And so how are the manufacturers going to warranty their battery packs?
Okay, so Buzz, if you got any words on how are the manufacturers going to warranty their battery packs?
Almost every manufacturer warranties not just the battery pack, but the charging system and the electric drive components for 8 years, 100,000 miles. I believe Hyundai goes 10 years, 100,000 miles. And for you to collect on that warranty, you have to lose, I believe it's 40% of the capacity or the range of the battery before they'll actually just swap the battery out. But very few people have seen, in the liquid cooled battery world, very few people have seen that kind of range loss. It's really the early Nissan Leafs, and is it Leafs or Leaves? I'm not sure, but the second generation Nissan Leaf, they changed the battery chemistry. They still did not go with liquid cooling, but they haven't solved the problem completely. I have a friend that has a second generation Leaf, and he's seen some range loss already, but not nearly what the first generation people were seeing.
And it's interesting you mentioned about the 8 years. So I had in 2011 an original Chevy Volt with a V, and it's since gone to my nephew, and he told me that not too long ago, so while it was still in its battery warranty of 8 years, there was some kind of a problem that came up, and he went to the dealership. They actually replaced it with an entire brand new battery. So on an 8-year-old car, he ended up with a brand new battery. Now it's the plug-in hybrid, so if it's a smaller battery, of course, than a full battery electric vehicle, but still, it shows the manufacturers are, in some cases, standing up and replacing the battery completely when it's not meeting that 8-year.
And one thing, if you're out there shopping for a pre-owned electric vehicle, if you're buying it from somebody that doesn't manufacture electric vehicles, like a CarMax or Carvana or something like that, tell the salesperson before you'll buy it, you want to take it to a dealership for that brand of electric vehicle and just have them run diagnostics on the battery pack. Make sure it's in good shape before you invest your hard-earned dollars on it. Something that we're starting to see happen, last year at Fully Charged Live in Austin, there was a used car lot that only sold electric vehicles. I believe it was from the Chicago area. And talking to them behind the scenes, I found out that, all of these dealers, used car departments don't understand EVs. I mean, actually, a lot of the salespeople on the new side don't understand the EVs that they're selling. And I'm sure you guys have experienced that. But in the used car side, it's just absolutely an alien creature to them. And so we're seeing the rise of focused pre-owned electric vehicle dealers. And up here in Dallas, there's one called iDrive One. It's a little I like iPhone, but iDrive and then the number one. And predominantly, just like predominantly most EVs on the road today are Teslas. Predominantly what they're selling is Teslas, but they do have some Nissan Leafs and some other electric vehicles. And they're experienced enough that they can run the diagnostics, tell you that the car is in good shape or not. And I think we're going to see more and more of that over time because people want to know, it's such an alien concept when you get that first new electric vehicle that they just want to know that what they're getting has a good battery pack. And it's going to become important that the dealers that sell these understand and run diagnostics on them. And if they don't, tell them you're not going to buy the car unless you can take it to a dealer and have it checked out. I've given people this advice for years, and I think the Chevy dealer that I worked for charged like $170 to run a diagnostic report on the battery pack. And if it, helps you sleep better at night, that'll be the best $170 you've ever spent.
Yeah, that sounds like very sound advice to get it checked out like that. Actually, you reminded me of two different things that I wanted to, one that I wanted to bring up before the end of the meeting. But first, you're talking about how salespeople sometimes aren't very knowledgeable. There was a time when Robert and I went to a dealership when a new model had come out. And yeah, so they had a couple of the salespeople come out and start talking to us. And it was very obvious very quickly that Robert and I were teaching. Yeah, it wasn't even charged when we got there. We were teaching the salespeople about what they had. But the really good thing that I wanted to bring up before the end of the meeting, I'll bring it up now. You mentioned the fully charged in Austin, so one event that already took place, and they have scheduled one for next year. It'll be at a different location, and so that's exciting coming up in 2022. But also this fall in November, there is, again, at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, where that first event was held, an expo that's coming up. And we'll be talking more about that because that comes up in November. But there's 3 of these expos across the country. The first 2 are more the East Coast, West Coast, sorry, Hawaii. But the third one is here in Texas, in Austin. And just as a number of our club members, and so for the new folks here, we can end up carpooling and things like that if folks are been going to Austin for that event. It's a fun thing.
Elon opened up the new Tesla Center.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So of course, in Austin, they're building the new Tesla factory, which is something that's really exciting. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that and talk some more about that. But,
Now
so more questions. Go ahead.
That show that you just mentioned that's going to be at the Circuit of the Americas, this is the first time I've seen something like this where they're actually going to have a ride and drive section. So if you have a friend that's been, thinking about an EV or doubtful about EVs, take them to Austin, go to this thing. When I went to Fully Charged Live last year, there were people that had driven from New York State, people had driven from Canada, people had driven from Washington State in their electric vehicles all the way to Austin. It was a great gathering.
All right. So John or Eric, who wants to go first?
I just wanted to thank him for negotiating, kind of fighting the road tax. And suggesting that there's a more appropriate level than what they're.
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned Texetra and the different bills that were proposed, some with really outrageous fixed fees to be added to the registration of EVs. And yeah, thanks for fighting that. So I'll mention to folks that don't know. So our chapter is a member of Texetra, which is the organization that does political lobbying, trying to affect what bills come up in the Texas legislature, which of course, in the case of like registration fees, affect all of us who own EVs. And so our chapter is a member of that. But yeah, thanks to you and everybody else who's doing good work. I did one contact to a representative as well. All right, John.
Yeah, I have a Volt EV 2017, 2017, and they have a second recall for the battery. The first recall came out January, February, whatever. And all it was a reprogramming and knock it down to 90%. It was actually 95. So that you couldn't use the top 5%, but they were still having fire. So they said that they came out with a second one. And in the meantime, Kevin Douglas actually got his car purchased back from Chevy, and he bought a new one with the money that he got back. Someone else got one. So anyway, before they came out with that second recall, they were buying cars back on an individual basis. So now they're not going to buy back cars. My car is going back in to get reprogrammed tomorrow. So what they're going to do is they're going to figure out if anything's wrong with it and then program it so that it'll tell me or shut down if something does go wrong. So that's the newest thing is basically a new program. It's going to tell the car to shut off if it's got something wrong.
Okay, so if you could hear parts of that. So with John's 2017 Chevy Bolt with a B, he's followed what's happening with the recalls. So the first one, they did a reprogramming and his car is going in soon for another set of called reprogramming, testing and reprogramming. So that should give the result then that the car will give a warning if it's finding something it doesn't like about the battery heating up or something like that. Okay.
Yeah,
And
but
you'll shut it down until you take it in.
yeah, so, but apparently two of our club members have actually switched out from their original Bolt EVs, one to a newer Bolt EV, and the other person I know switched over to a Volkswagen ID4. And he's unfortunately not able to make it in person tonight, but you can see that Jason has dialed in. And so at the end of the meeting, Jason, we'd absolutely like to hear some good words. I've already heard some good words, so I know they're good, on your experience with the ID4. So we'll do that. But
The
Yeah,
ID4
John.
is an excellent electric vehicle. I got to drive one for about 45 minutes recently with the new owner, and the video of that, we had cameras mounted inside the car, and the video of that's on my YouTube channel, but it is a phenomenal vehicle.
Good, good. Okay, John.
Okay, the skateboard idea, the whole skateboard idea
Yeah.
is basically a drive-by.
Ah,
So,
okay.
I guess the Teslas are doing it now, you hit the brake, and there's enough cables going down the brake system, making it all work. It is the top part tells the bottom part to brake.
Mm-hmm.
When you turn, same thing.
Okay.
You don't turn the wheels, you're telling it to turn, and it's telling the bottom part to turn.
Yeah, okay.
So none of, it's not connected, it's all fly by wire.
So, yeah, so a further development for the skateboard is rather than have mechanical linkages for things like brakes and steering wheel, which cars have had up until now, that you would actually have just a wire command system going to those. And that way the skateboard part is entirely independent of what's up on top.
And carrying that
Okay.
to the next level, that Canoe vehicle that we saw earlier in the presentation, they don't even have displays on the dashboard. You take your tablet, mount it on the dash, and it becomes the display for the car.
Yeah. Okay, so Don, one last question.
Yes, with the dealership model the way it is for maintenance and things like that, and the low maintenance involved with an EV, how is the dealership model going to be evolving in order to help EV owners? Are dealerships reluctant to sell EVs because of that? And where's that going?
So as you're probably familiar, how the dealership model has worked for decades is under a bit of assault with EVs coming out and needing less maintenance. So what do you see happening with the dealership model?
Well, it's exactly what you could expect. How many of you guys, when you drove an ICE car, actually would take it back to the dealer for an oil change or for new tires? Most of us didn't. We found cheaper places to buy tires, do oil changes, things like that. So we didn't really have a whole lot of loyalty to the dealership service department. Now, if there was something critical, yeah, we'd go back to the dealer because they know the car better than anybody else does. But what a dealer out in California shared with the vice president of the dealership that I used to work for, that I found to be very interesting, is that it's been a big worry in the dealership world that one of their big revenue centers, service, was just going to disappear because electric vehicles don't need much service. And what this dealer in California found was their customers that bought electric vehicles from them were 100% loyal to that dealership's service department. They didn't even buy tires anywhere else. They went back to that dealer. So yes, there is a volume loss on the number of service visits that you're going to make, but you're going to be completely loyal to that dealer. And those of you that have bought new electric vehicles, you probably go back to your dealer whenever you have anything done on the car, because you don't want anybody else touching it that doesn't completely understand electric vehicles. I think in the short term, that's what we're going to see, is that they'll be completely loyal. They're not going to go to a shade tree mechanic and let that guy work on their electric vehicle. They're going to go back to the dealer. And so it ends up being you don't really see a loss of revenue. It stays level.
Great. Thanks for that real life experience and all your experiences there. I think that we'll wrap up questions with you, Buzz, and switch over to Nanette, but we'd really like to say thanks for your spending your time with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, John.
I have two electrics, and they're both dealer cars.
2 electrics in both dealer cars. When you say dealer cars, take them to the dealer. So you're reinforcing what Buzz just said. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, Buzz, you're welcome to stick around. And of course, you're welcome to always come to our meetings, either in person or electronically in the future. You see what kind of setup we have here.
I do look forward to coming to your meetings in person at some point. From time to time, I'm on the ESPN radio affiliate being interviewed by In Wheel Time, the radio program on Saturdays. So born and raised in Houston, the reason I was in oil and gas for the first 10 years of my career was I was a Houston boy. So can't wait to come back. I'll visit my family down there and swing by and say hi to you guys.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, Nanette, thanks for hanging in there. And I'd like to say a few words here about Nanette's background as we get started here. So Nanette is a longtime EV owner and renewable energy user in Hawaii. So she does make trips back to California, but Hawaii is where she's generally located. She's the founder and president of the Tesla Hawaii Club, which was established in 2013 and is part of the Global Tesla Owners Club program. The club serves to enhance the ownership experience for more than 200 active members located across the state of Hawaii. The club hosts numerous meetups and events each year, as well as provides opportunities for owners to connect over social media. She is also a founding member and current board secretary/treasurer of the Hawaii EV Association, which is a Hawaii chapter of the Electric Auto Association. Hawaii EV was formed in 2019 and consists of leaders of various EV organizations on each of the Hawaiian Islands. Hawaii EV's mission is to accelerate the electrification of transportation in Hawaii through advocacy, education, and support of infrastructure expansion. Of course, that's really crucial, we all know, for charging when you want to take a trip. While her career path stems from the commercial real estate industry, her experience with the Tesla Hawaii community has led her to increased awareness and passion for promoting sustainable transportation throughout the state of Hawaii. So, and I see your first slide up there, so please take it away, Nanette.
Aloha, everybody. Thank you so much for having me speak at your event. It's really interesting for me to hear what's going on in Texas, and I hope you'll find it interesting to hear what's going on here in Hawaii as far as EVs go. So let me get started here. Hold on. Okay, so I'm kind of wearing 2 hats today. I am the president of the Tesla Owners Club in Hawaii and also a board member of Hawaii EV Association. The Hawaii EV Association, Dave read our mission statement there, but we're basically a coalition of 3 different organizations, EV organizations, who found that we were all promoting advocacy for EVs, EV charging infrastructure. So we joined together. Big Island EV was the original Electric Auto Association chapter. So we kind of felt we created Hawaii EV Association that includes Big Island EV, the Tesla Owners Club, and Kauai EV. On the bottom there are some of our partners that we work with. They're various clean transportation and clean energy organizations here in Hawaii that we work really closely with. And one of our newest partners is the American Lung Association, because they kind of have the goal of having clean air for everyone. So they're going to be a good partner for us. Okay, so before we talk about EVs in Hawaii, we need to talk about the energy landscape in Hawaii. In 2015, Hawaii passed the nation's first renewable energy law, and that's where the state is aiming for 100% renewable energy and carbon neutrality by 2045. So if you see in the bottom on my left, I guess, Hawaii is very heavily reliant on oil, on fossil fuels, because we are in the middle of the ocean. We're a bunch of islands. So we're about 90% reliant on fossil fuels, 11% on clean energy, and that number is growing. So we have a long way to go before we can achieve that 100% renewable energy goal. And then on the right side, under that Tesla Model S with the wind farms, windmills in the background, that's on the Big Island of Hawaii. On the chart below, it just shows that brown The brown line there shows our high dependence on oil. And down here where the yellow is energy use with solar. So we still have a long way to go. All right. So how many EVs are there in Hawaii? If you have come to visit recently, you'll see a lot of Teslas here. We've got over 6,500 Teslas in the state. And here is, this chart shows the number of registered passenger vehicles in Hawaii by fuel type. You can see electric vehicles back in 2016, we were only about 4,400. And now we're probably over 15,000. These numbers are as of May, and we should probably be over 15,000 by now. And the good part is, since 2016, you can see that the gas vehicles registered has declined, as well as the diesel vehicles, and hybrids and electric vehicles have increased. Electric vehicles have increased a significant amount over just the past 5 years. And if we take a look at EVs per capita, Hawaii's population is only about 1.4 million residents. So back in 2016, that was 1 EV per about 300 residents, and now we're 1 EV per just a little bit less than 100 residents. So a lot of progress has been made just in the last few years alone. And when we break it down by cars, by islands, Oahu is our main island where most of the population lives. So most of the EVs are here. So we've got close to 12,000 on Oahu, and then Maui, Big Island, and Kauai. Big Island is we call it the Big Island. It's actually the island of Hawaii, and it's the biggest island, so we call it the Big Island. The picture on the left is from one of our Drive Electric, I think it was Drive Electric Week, National Drive Electric Week meetups. We did a cruise around the island, so that's for the Tesla Club. There are, I think I mentioned, there are over nearly 6,500 Teslas, I think, now in the state. So again, when you come visit, you're going to see a lot of Teslas here. And how do we charge these cars? Most people, I think with a lot of places, they charge at home. But we do have a percentage of the population of owners that rely on public charging. So if you just take a look at the home charging, the time of use rate chart on the right side, this is our current Hawaiian Electric, their current program. Their lowest rate, which is probably really high to you guys, is about 15 cents midday, and goes all the way up to 44 cents per kilowatt hour in peak times. So their focus is trying to get people to charge during the day. For public charging, we have the usual charging networks here: ChargePoint, OptConnect, SemaConnect, Volta, and Greenlots. Fast chargers, we have Hawaiian Electric. Our utility has their own fast charger network. They've got about 25 stations across the islands, and those rates run anywhere from about 49 cents all the way up to 66 cents per kilowatt, depending on what island you're on. It's been a superchargers for, everyone else has superchargers except for Hawaii, it seems. And just recently, we're getting our first public station that's in permitting now, and it's a long time coming. So we're pretty happy for that. There's a station on Lanai that Larry Ellison owns, and that's for his fleet of Teslas on that island. Destination chargers, Tesla destination chargers, we don't have too many of them. A lot of them are at the resorts, and it's for the guests to charge their EVs, and public can charge as well. And then we have 2 stores here, one in Waikiki and one in Ala Moana, which is near Waikiki, and there's chargers there. So we are definitely in need of more chargers. And this is pretty current. This is how many charging stations we have across the islands. We have 285 stations for around 700, I guess, charging outlets. And these are level 2 and DC fast chargers. And these are the public chargers. So definitely not enough chargers considering how many EVs we have. And even if we assume that 10% of EV owners rely on public charging, it's like 1,400 owners that are looking for public charging sources. So something that we are working on to get that infrastructure to grow. Okay, challenges. I like this picture. This is actually in Kauai with our Kauai EV Association. It's almost like we're hoping there's chargers at the end of at the end of the rainbow here. It's our pot of gold. Challenges for limited infrastructure in multifamily buildings, being involved with Tesla for so long. Back in 2014, we were telling them we need superchargers. There's people in condo buildings, they have no home charging. It's not a distance thing for us, but it is to accommodate those people. And Tesla realizes that, so they're working on plans for I think four supercharger station or sites on Oahu and a few more on the neighbor islands. Expense versus amenity. Right now, electric vehicles only make up, I guess it's about 14% of the total vehicle population. So for certain landlords, who own shopping centers or office buildings, it's more of an expense that they have to put a charger in versus seeing it as an amenity that, it's good for, people will come and visit your property who own EVs. So it's kind of something that a hurdle we're having to get over to get those property owners to put more chargers on their properties. Charger maintenance, even though we have chargers, a lot of them don't get repaired when they're broken, or it takes forever for them to get repaired. So that's another challenge. And then lengthy permitting process. Everything in Hawaii takes a long time, especially to build. So permitting can take a while, even though the Tesla supercharger started back in April. We'll be lucky if they get built by the end of the year. We're hoping, but the process is just pretty painful, actually. So that's one of the challenges. And then equity, that's something I think a lot of places have, where we need to spread out where our chargers are, get them into those lower income neighborhoods so that we can get them to drive EVs as well. All right, so Robert asked me what the perception of EVs is in Hawaii, and it's probably the same as it is there. This is a perfect picture for this Model X. This is in an affluent waterfront community. There's also luxury homes up on the hill there. You can see up the hill, and that's the perception of EVs in Hawaii, that it's for the elite, it's for rich people. Even with the Model 3 and the Model Y and other EVs coming out, that can be the perception of the general public and of our legislators as well, which makes it really difficult for us to get EV bills, favorable bills passed, because we need to convince these legislators as well that it's not really just for the rich people. So these are some of the key EV laws that we have here. I already talked about the first two. Actually, I didn't talk about the first one. The first one is where all public places have to have 100 parking stalls have to have at least one EV charger. So that was passed back in 2012. That's probably when we only had maybe 400 or 500 EVs. So that law has been in place. That's something we're trying to change, because that's still not enough. We need to get that up into maybe at least 4 per center or per public place. The renewable energy law, we talked about that. And then the next one is the building code in Honolulu. We were able to get that changed to include having EV charger ready stalls for any new commercial or condominium multifamily construction. And that's a huge win for Oahu, and it's something that we're trying to get passed on the state level too, because changing the building code is really, really difficult. So the ending bill was really watered down, but at least we have that requirement in there. So that's a big win for us. And the next two have to deal with our state fleets. The picture that we show here of it's a state Model Y for the Department of Transportation. And they have a 10-year contract with sustainability partners to provide electric vehicles. And this was just in April, where they delivered their first electric vehicle for the Department of Transportation. And so there's about 40 of them, I believe now, as part of that fleet. So the state is doing their part to try and get clean transportation, or hit our clean transportation goals by 2045. And then the next one is that state employees have, they need to rent EVs. I guess it's a preference before doing any other gas cars. And these two are really important because the employees that drive these EVs for work may never have driven an EV before. So just to get them into an EV is a big win. So hopefully that they'll consider an EV for their personal car. And finally, the last bill that got passed was charging station rebates, which we were able to get funded by using 3 cents of the ballot tax. So that way we can hopefully increase charging infrastructure that way where there's a rebate for property owners. And this will also enforce EV parking and charging station rules. There's so many times that there's a ICE vehicle parked in a charger and nothing's done really to enforce it. So this bill will put those processes in place. And I wanted to point out that 2021, we had 3 bills passed, EV related bills. I mean, that's out of 24 bills. So it's a big win for us to get 1 bill passed, but to get 3 bills passed just really shows how the mindset is starting to change regarding electric vehicles. Okay, and finally, just a little bit about Hawaii EV Association and Tesla Hawaii Club. We do a lot of events together, especially for National Drive Electric Week and Drive Electric Day. So this is just some of the flyers from our recent or the past events that we've had. Of course, the last 2 events have been virtual, but we talk about things such as we always do a EV buying session, buying and owning an EV session, and then we follow it up with other trends such as what is the future of EVs in Hawaii? How do the last one we had somebody talk about how they were able to convince their HOA to install chargers at their building. And we also did virtual EV test drives. So we had the Mach-E, and the Tesla Hawaii Club also did a Model Y test drive video. And you guys can see that if you ever if you're interested in seeing it, you can go to our YouTube site. It's Tesla Hawaii Club, and we have that video up there. And then the bottom pictures are just the pictures of the events. And the bottom right is of the Tesla Hawaii Club at one of the National Drive Electric Week events. So that's just some of the things that our EV Association does and our EV organizations do here. I think people are surprised when they realize how many EVs there are in Hawaii. A lot of us have solar, and I was trying to find the numbers so I could kind of correlate how many EVs actually power their car by the sun. I'm one of them. I know Steve is on the call with us. He's also one of them. There are quite a few of us. But let me see. And that's it, actually. That's EVs in Hawaii.
That is fantastic. So much info you've packed in there, Nanette. Thanks so much.
If there's any questions.
So before I actually open it up to questions, just a couple of things. So on the commercial real estate side, you mentioned that they're including now requirement for EV charging. I think that's really great. So glad that you mentioned that. So, all right, Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned renewables and non-fossil fuels. What is the renewable mix? How much of it is wind? How much of it is solar? Because Texas, for being an oil state, it's also a wind state too. And
yeah,
we're going to become a solar.
Let me go back to that chart. Let's see. Yeah, wind is really picking up. You can kind of see. I don't know the exact percentages. I can get those. But wind is this blue line here on the bottom. So it's just kind of below the solar line. But we have the wind farms get a lot of resistance from the residents here because it blocks the view and the noise and things like that. And there's only a certain amount of places that we can put these, and unfortunately they're in the more rural areas where the residents are more vocal. But I can find out what those numbers are. I'd be interested on that too.
I know they're coming out they're starting to research like wave energy from the ocean waves too. So it'd basically be windmills underwater. And so I don't know if that'll be a big
Yeah.
thing in Hawaii.
Yeah,
Fun come out of it.
I've heard of somebody starting to do that. I don't know what the status is of that, but there are people looking at that type of renewable energy here.
Yeah, so it's always good when it's more renewable. As you mentioned, there's still quite a bit of oil. Used to be a lot of states used oil more significantly. So, but it's good to see the trends that Hawaii's been cutting back on the oil and increasing the renewable.
Yeah, and it's great that our utility has been really active in promoting clean transportation, and we've worked with them a lot. You know, they're in our presentations. If they need something, they need to relay anything to the Tesla group about using their fast chargers. If they have questions about Teslas and using their fast chargers, they'll come to me. So we've got a really good relationship with the organizations that are here. So it's been good. I think
Good,
we have.
good. Yeah, I was going to say there might be a chat question in there.
Question.
Okay.
I've seen more than one.
So Ken is asking, here in Texas, we have seen more than one event this year that demonstrated the electric infrastructure is not ready to handle current events, let alone the increased load of charging and an increasing number of EVs. Is the Hawaii electric infrastructure ready to support charging more EVs?
We are ready. If everybody in this room has a charger at their house, why are we not ready? I don't understand that.
Well, we can ask.
I'm sure he was referring to the freeze that happened and killed our grid.
We're also not connected to other states. We're on our own. We're not connected to neighboring states. There was a thing to get away from federal authority and back 8 years ago.
Yeah, so Nanette, we're talking about how Texas is on its own separate grid. So in a way, it's kind of analogous to Hawaii in that you obviously can't import power from another state. Texas has done it for political reasons. Obviously, it's geography in your case. But yeah, so, but to Ken's immediate question, the Hawaii electric infrastructure, is it ready to support charging more EVs?
No. Well, for fast chargers, it's a little challenging because of the power requirement. And Hawaiian Electric has done a really good job of finding those locations. Of course, it's easier for them to get those approvals, and because you do need to tap into the grid. So Tesla has that issue where they have to work closely with the utility for their supercharger sites. But it is difficult to find those high power capacity areas for fast chargers. As for destination chargers or public chargers, that the level 2 chargers, those are more easily implemented. It's just a matter of, I always tell people that we're on an island, land is limited. People who own properties, it's kind of like we want to save our parking stalls, we don't want to have to take up I think it's like 12 parking stalls so you can install this infrastructure for a supercharger. And when it's like 1 out of 10 cars is electric, they don't see the need yet. You push them to be proactive because it's coming. Look at how fast the number of EVs is growing. But a lot of people are reactive versus proactive, so that's a challenge.
Yeah, there's certainly challenges there, and I would kind of see what you're saying is folks in Hawaii use their cars a bit differently than people in states where they can start on a long trip. And I'm always explaining to folks that in terms of charging, you tend to define your use of your car 2 ways, one for local use and one for long distance use. In Hawaii, you're probably a little bit more limited to just local use because you're not going to start off on a 1,000-mile trip and need to plan some quick charging stops along the way. And so therefore, it makes a lot more sense. The level 1, level 2 charging is what folks are going to use.
Yeah, I think our average
uses more. Go ahead.
I think our average commute, because we do have people, that commute into our downtown, and our Waikiki is about 20 miles a day. So we have a lot of leafs here. And when I got my first Tesla in 2013, it was the 40 kilowatt, well, the range limited 40 kilowatt version, because 140 miles was fine for me, you know?
Sure.
So range is not an issue here. It's more of access for people who are renters, who are in these condos where it's too expensive to install the charging infrastructure. That's where we need that charger infrastructure to increase, and to also for the existing condos, you know, we're trying to make it easier for them to install chargers as well.
Yeah, so yeah, on kind of a direction, as you're saying, that kind of can constrain people is maybe a higher percentage of folks there in Hawaii live in condos and apartments, as opposed to houses where they have a place to park in a garage and
Yeah.
have electricity right there at the wall. So yeah, that's something that folks need to have a more centralized charging system.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Okay. So other questions here, Eric?
Is she aware of any electric microtransit opportunities in Hawaii?
So you're talking about like an 8-passenger runaround shuttle that's electric or something when you say micro?
Small metro.
Buses, public buses.
Are you familiar with any public transit that's electrified? So either buses
Yeah,
or something
so
smaller?
our city public buses, I think it was December, we just the first one was launched, and then was it last month they installed a big charging pack that can charge up to 32 electric buses. So the city is looking to increase their electric buses here. I know there's at least one running right now.
Good.
And also the tourist buses. I think a couple of the big tourist companies have electric buses too.
Ah, very good. Okay. And we've already talked about the renewable energy, and that's always kind of a chicken and an egg kind of thing for demand on that. But I always see it that, yeah, for buses and other things, if the state doesn't have to import oil, if you can use domestic electricity, whether it comes from wind or solar, which, as we said, is growing. It's small now, but it's growing.
Yeah.
Then that's good, because less importation of something is usually good for an economy. So, in fact, you made a mention on one of your slides about something 3 cents per barrel tax or something. What is the barrel tax?
So the barrel tax there, it's what gets charged on every barrel of oil that comes into the state. And it's $1. I think it's about $1.05 now. So a portion of it already goes to funding. Yeah, it's basically a gas barrel tax. Yeah, the oil barrel tax.
Okay, so that goes into the state's coffers then?
Yes.
The state government collects that. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of times taxes are used to discourage things that are disliked by a state, by an economy kind of thing, you know. And so, yeah, you don't want lots and lots of money being spent for imported items where it's can be.
One thing, when you guys were talking about the registration fees, that was something we actually had passed here in 2019, I believe. And ours is $50 per year that we add on to our registration, which is reasonable, but of course, and I'm all for paying our share of the road taxes.
Yeah.
So we're at $50 now, and we're hoping, I mean, compared to what we've heard on the mainland, like $200, $300 a year, I guess we're lucky.
Yeah. I'm with you about paying a fair share, a fair amount is good. And I've always tried to keep in my mind, so Hawaii has higher price gasoline per gallon, but it also has higher electricity. But we all know that electric vehicles are more efficient on the energy that they use. So I've tried to, in my mind, think, obviously you're using less fuel, electric fuel. I imagine you're still coming out ahead, even with the higher electricity prices.
Yeah, I think the goal is to at least be at parity with,
Okay.
with the usage, right? And again, as far as solar goes, we probably have one of the highest rates per capita for solar usage. so there's a lot of us that have PV, and that's how I charge my car during the day, and that's it. So I take advantage of that solar energy.
Oh, we all know that it's a very good symbiotic relationship. And as I've told some of the old time members here, that our Model S, which, as you know, you have to give a name to the Tesla cars. The name of the Model S that we got is EV plus PV.
That's a good one.
That shows, where you can get your fuel from. You can get it from the sun. Yeah.
So,
all right. So other questions from folks in the room?
so one thing, well, folks are thinking of questions that I've wondered about. In one of your photos, you showed the backs of cars with license plates. So Hawaii actually has an EV specific license plate. Is that right?
We do. Let's see if we can. Where was that? So this one, this is actually covered up. I'm trying to see if there's another one.
Yeah, the ones I saw were
really
just kind of glancing
Yeah.
views like that. But I've
Yeah.
known from
These have the
an EV plate.
Hawaii EV. We do have an EV plate, and that's how we back in, actually, I think it was in 2012 as well. You can't really see it here, but they established EV incentives where you could park for free at municipal lots. So at the airport, you could park for free. And so you need to have the EV plate for that, as well as using the HOV lane. So all EVs have, it's basically just electric vehicle and then like 4 numbers or a combination of numbers and letters. So that's how we're able to actually track the number of Teslas. We see one and we just jot the EV plate down.
Okay.
But you don't have to have, you don't have to have it. Even when you're charging at an EV charger, you're supposed to have it. But people, they don't really enforce that. And most people just keep the EV plate.
Okay, good.
All right. Question, John.
Do a lot of the solar owners also have a house battery? I was under the impression that
Yes.
Hawaii had more, like, different brands of house batteries that we don't get here, like more Chinese brands.
Could you catch all of that about
Yeah.
PV systems that include batteries?
We do. A lot of us have, I have the Tesla battery, and I think Stephen has a Tesla battery too. Stephen, are you aware of any other types of batteries out there? Oh, he's not. Can you hear me, Stephen?
Maybe the
Steve?
question's not coming through, but yeah. That's okay, yeah.
He's on.
But I could see why a certain number of, with the higher electricity prices, it makes it more valuable to be able to time shift your electricity in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. Well, I think I'd like to wrap it up here. We've got a couple other real quick discussion topics. You're welcome to stay on, but we really appreciate all the great news and information that you've given us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I would like to just bring up 2 things. I mentioned already about the expo in November. NDEW is the National Drive Electric Week, and we'll talk more about that in September when we have that coming up. But I wanted to mention NEDRA that Keith Howard and I talked about on the phone a little bit. And then Jason, you're online here. We wanted to hear from you about your experience with your ID4 and pulling a trailer, a camping trailer. So who wants to go first? Jason? Okay, he's saying you go first, Jason.
Yeah, okay. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you fine. We see a great view from the space station of the Earth.
Oh, nice. There we go. I think there's my video.
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, we just got our ID4 back in April. We picked up a first edition reservation when they announced the US version. And it actually, the timing worked out perfect. Chevy bought back our old Bolt at the same time that, like, within a week of the ID4 arriving in the US. So that was good. And with the most recent 2 more fires on the bolts that have had the quote unquote final fix, we were real happy to hand that off to someone else. So that worked out. ID4's been pretty great, honestly. We've already taken it on a couple camping trips with the tent trailer, and it tows great. Honestly, I haven't seen any of the real negative stuff that people have complained about, where like the infotainment supposedly really laggy. It's been fine. The Android Auto is really snappy and all of that. Yeah, and it's got tons of power. I mean, not as much as like a performance Tesla, but more than your standard ICE SUV. So that's really cool. And yeah, let's see. With the tent trailer, it's really I think it's like we took a 30% hit to our range, which isn't too bad.
It's not bad at all, considering other folks who've towed things. So Mike Zutek is online here. I'm sure he's probably particularly interested in your towing experience.
Yeah, I think the most inconvenient part is having to unhook it at some of the charging stations, but I think you you might have experienced that. Actually, a lot of the stations we've been at, especially the Electrify America ones, which don't have anyone else at, we've been able to just pull up alongside it and plug in and just hang out close to the car so we can move it if someone comes in who needs the stations. Feels kind of like a jerk move, but it's much more convenient than having to unhook the trailer.
Right, I can probably imagine that the Electrify America charging cords are longer than, say, what somebody's used to Tesla. So you can, as you say, park in a way that you don't have to disconnect the trailer, which, as you say, is a pain.
Much easier to do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So the positioning sometimes allows you to stay connected. Good.
Yeah. We just need more pull-through stalls because there's not many of those at all. The other thing that's really handy is, given our summers here in Texas, it's, pretty much all of the campgrounds around here have 50 amp plugs. So you can always plug in your car and get a full charge as long as you bring a mobile charger, which is pretty nice. And so,
okay, that's a good thing to keep in mind for folks. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions about it. I know one thing I was really interested in before getting it was how good is the like adaptive cruise and everything. I'd say it's not quite as good as Tesla's. It's way better than Chevy's, although I haven't tried Chevy's Super Cruise. And it is, so I would say it's better than Chevy's, what they put in the Volt, the plug-in hybrid. Better than Kia's for sure. I don't know. I haven't tried that many others.
Okay. And just so I don't forget, in addition to hearing some more things about the ID4, one of our members here was asking about a better route planner and finding charging stations. So if you want to hit upon that, and then we'll go back to the ID4 again.
Sure. What was the question?
So the question was, how do you find the stations? Something like that?
Yeah, and stations are, if they claim they have a certain number of chargers, is that what you really find when you go there? In other words, how accurate is the information you're provided?
Right. Okay. So when traveling, folks, of course, need to know that the chargers are there and they're up and working. So what do you find in terms of the data on the charging stations?
So especially for Electrify America, it's actually really accurate. I'll let you guys in on a little secret there. We actually get some of that information directly from Electrify America. It's not really full on public knowledge yet, but yeah, so that stuff is very accurate. It's static, so it's not, it's not like up to the minute data, but it is accurate, at least on the power and the number of stalls. And actually, most of the station data is pretty good. We get it from like the government database, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory that provides that database that actually Nanette was using in her presentation to show the charging stations in Hawaii. So it's pretty accurate.
Does that basically give you the info that you wanted? I think so. Find out about it.
Is he using a better route planner?
Yes, a betterrouteplanner.com, or there's an app.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the other big one, if you find something that's, if you find a station that's not correct, we generally provide a link to whatever we sourced that data from, so you can go correct it.
Well, that's good too, then, yeah. All right.
So this is Mike Zuchek, and for what it's worth, I'll just echo the experience with having some places where nobody's there and you can pull in. This is with a Tesla X, and you can actually pull in so that the charge port's on the correct side, plug in, and do the same thing you've done. And we're getting about the same hit in range, about 1/3, but by dropping to 60. We have to drop to 60 to do that. That's with a full-size casita. It's only a 16-foot trailer, but it's a big profile. It doesn't fold down or anything like that. So our experience on that is similar. And the other thing I would say about campgrounds is do take some kind of an insulated implement that you can, on rare occasion, reach into the receptacle and get out what the mud daubers have put in, which otherwise you can't, and get your electricity.
Yep.
So just a few practical quick points.
One thing, this is Pamela Zuchek. What inspired you to get the ID4 as opposed to a Bolt or something else that was coming up?
So we had a Bolt, and the charging speed on the Bolt is abysmal.
Yes, I have one.
So we wanted something that charged faster. The things we were cross shopping was basically what was out at the time, which was the Model Y, the Mach-E, and the ID4. Model Y we liked, but it was almost $20,000 more expensive than the ID4 when you factor in all the tax credits and everything. That and the ride quality was actually worse on the Model Y. It's a lot stiffer suspension, a lot sportier. The ID4 is way smoother. It's a really nice ride, and which is really important for us with young kids that are going to nap in the car. We don't want to go over a big bump on I-10 heading out west and wake them up. So that was a big deciding factor, the price and the comfort. And then the Mach-E was pretty cool too, except it doesn't have a tow rating at all. So, it would be kind of the same position as the Bolt, where we did tow a pop-up trailer on some real short trips with the Bolt. But really you shouldn't be doing that for big trips just because of the lack of a tow rating means the brakes aren't really rated for it and all the other stuff. So it's not great.
Yeah, those are good points. Yeah. Okay. So, Emma. Yeah.
Okay, Jason, did Volkswagen give you some kind of incentive in terms of charging on the Electrify America network? Like,
oh yeah.
Give you free charging for a year?
Yep, we got the free charging for 3 years. So this last weekend when Electrify America had their free 4th of July charging, I was like, oh, we should go somewhere. And then I remembered, oh yeah, we get free charging anyway. So why fight the crowds?
Yeah, that's okay, good. Other questions regarding the ID4? So, yeah.
I have a question about the charging.
Yeah.
So is it universal? I thought he was saying that one company had proprietary where you couldn't connect.
So why don't you go ahead and start, Jason, and I'll fill in the difference in charging standards.
So ID4 uses CCS, which is the kind of universal connector that pretty much everyone's using nowadays. Even Tesla's using it in Europe. And yeah, so that's pretty much what all the new stations are being built with, except for Tesla. And Tesla uses their own plug.
Yeah, so basically all the different makers, whether it's BMW or Chevy or Volkswagen, they use the standard that's North American standard. Europe has got a different standard, but Europe has asked Tesla to switch over to that universal standard. So all the cars are using one standard. Here in the US, Teslas are different. They have a different type of connector. For the slower speed charging, there's an adapter available. For the higher speed charging, there is no adapter available in North America. Yeah. So when people take trips, people that drive Teslas will go to a Tesla supercharger, whereas anyone else driving any other brand of car can go to any of the other networks, EVgo, Electrify America that we mentioned, because those connectors are all standardized.
You said there was an adapter that you can get to go on the end of your Tesla to charge?
For level 1 and level 2, you can use that adapter, yes.
Yeah, there is speculation
Yeah.
that Tesla's going to put out an adapter for CCS, but it's still speculation. Although if you lived in Korea, you would be able to get one in the next month or two. So it's just a question of if they bring it to the US.
Yeah.
So could you purchase one in Korea? Would it work or would it be set?
I don't know what connector, do they use the North American or the European Type 2 or something different entirely in Korea?
So on a physical level, it would work. It's a question of whether or not Tesla will acknowledge it on the car software. Because the adapter, in addition to physically connecting the wires, it also has to translate between Tesla speak and the standard speak. And whether or not the car software can do that is, it's a question.
Yeah, obviously the computer in the car is what turns on charging, and so whether it would do that or not, would probably be the question. But interesting that they are bringing it to Korea. Do you happen to know if that's due to government pressure or they just wanted to?
Actually, that's
give more
because
flexibility?
I think in Korea, I've heard that they have, a huge number of CCS stations, like the standard stations, and relatively few Tesla stations. So it's more consumer pressure there.
Ah, interesting. Okay. All right, good. Well, thanks, Jason. I think we'd like, well, Keith actually, he didn't come back after a phone call. Well, I guess we can't talk with him about NEDRA. Maybe if he doesn't make it back here, since it's almost 8:30, we'll ask him to talk about NEDRA next month. So NEDRA being the electric race car, so Adam's going to see if he's actually available or not. The electric drag racing association. And so folks that are into that are really into it and like to talk about it.
He's on his way.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. That's great. Glad that you had the chance to dial in. And we look forward to seeing you here in person whenever you can make it.
With the car.
and some people are specifying you got to come with the car.
Yeah, we'll do.
All right. So, Keith, NEDRA.
NEDRA. Well, for all of you don't know what NEDRA means, it's the National Electric Drag Racing Association. So it's the electric side of NHRA, IHRA, and all that. So I like to go fast, have fun, make a difference, and do cool things. And now, obviously, with EVs, obviously, if you enjoy it, a lot of people buy Teslas because of the experience when you push the pedal to the floor with your right foot to do that. It's a fun car to drive. It's got performance, and obviously, electrification is instant torque, right? It's got great advantage in racing and motorsports and how to do that, how it's been engineered into the system. And now we're finally, at a point now. So the best thing is with NEDRA, if you own an EV and you want to go drag racing, to do that, where we used to be shunned from tracks and not be well accepted now, as they, like I say, I tell people that the NHRA, we were the bastard stepchild that nobody wanted to talk to and they hated us. Now we're the golden child because they see the green and they see the future, and it's called follow the money. Obviously seen Ford's in for $30 to $40 billion into the space. GM's got to follow the same thing. Everybody's in the $30 to $40 billion in space. And you look at the announcement today, whatever they call themselves now, of what Chrysler, and that is their worldwide brand now, Cybertruck or whatever. Stellantis, okay? They just did their drop today, what they're going to do with their electric supercar in 2024 to replace all their SRT stuff. Same thing. Everybody knows it's 30 to 35 to $40 billion is what they're going to put in by 2025 to do that. So the time now to have fun is here now to do that. The coolest thing I tell people that, we've been pushing, trying to push the envelope, do all the crazy stuff. Adam can attest to some of the crazy things we've tried to do over the years. And that now is the right time in the racing. That means where we can start to race with OPM, which is other people's money, not our own pockets. You can only tend to go as fast as your wallet will let you go to do that. So we're seeing the interest right there. The problem, the first drag racing cars, face it, were all cars that were built for specific drag racing, just like the first EVs were all what? They were conversions, right? And that's kind of how my path started. I happened to drive my 07 Shelby GT 500 to Coffee and Cars, and I park right next to Mr. Swan here with his S10 pickup truck. And that was my foray into meeting the group and everything. And that was probably, what, 2008 or so, I guess, that long ago to do that. So I dabble with that, which I've met people on the racing side and tried to figure out, you know, how can we do crazy stuff? How can we go faster? Now, what we've seen a change in that in the racing side of the situation is where everybody used to build purpose-built cars or conversions. Everybody, I guarantee you, probably all but him, you know, and he's even driving his daily driver's a Leaf, right? You know, even the guy with that. So we've seen a huge change from the conversion cars to people buying Teslas. Obviously, performance of Tesla, but hey, if you want to go drag race your Nissan Leaf, you can do that, because if you're familiar with drag racing, it's called bracket racing, right? It's a handicap sport. You put in how fast you're going to go. It's a reaction time to the lights, and the first one to the line wins, right? It's a handicap racing event. Now, that's been adopted by, since March. It was a big meeting in Gainesville at the Gator Nationals with the NHRA and all the principals from Ford, Chevy, GM, Mopar, Holley, everybody else, and really looking at what is the future of electrification going to be with drag racing. Just to talk about, we won't call it a round table, the round top end, because we couldn't stand around the table. From that event and working with Summit, one of the larger suppliers, to do that, we went from a conversation to, within the IHRA, you can go to any IHRA track when they have a bracket racing event and race your electric car at an IHRA track, okay? And even to make that better, if you happen to be the track champion at that IHRA track this year, and the closest one to here is obviously Alamo Speedway out in San Antonio, Extreme up 45, you go in the Valley to Edinburgh. If you're the track champion, you can go to, you get to go to Memphis, and you can race. If we get 32 cars, we'll have our own field, and you race for $5,000 this year. It went from an idea to where that is. NHRA is cool. Next, you know, obviously they blinked. We played poker with them, and they bit and went all in. So starting in 2022, next year we can race NHRA electric bracket racing to do that. And even for people that are really young, I mean, drag racing fans or enthusiasts, that, you know, we've talked about what is in 2023, what is an electric pro stock series going to look like? So it's the race to the electrification, like PB said with the trucks. You know, the truck situation from that is, you know, everybody's moving that direction. It's a function of how fast we can get there right now to do that. And that's where racing can drive the fun, because racing drives technology from Formula One, the high end, which is a hybrid, right? A Formula One car, for all you don't know, is a performance hybrid, okay, to do that. And you're seeing that even with IndyCar in 2023, it's going to go to hybrid. NASCAR is talking in 2025 to follow that path. So now's a really interesting time that we're doing some really cool things to do that. If you want to follow NEDRA, we're going to try to do a lot of neat things, trying to set some records and do some things. I've got to get, if you're familiar with dragger, Don Garlitz, you know, didn't get to 200 miles an hour first because of COVID, and the guy from the West Coast beat us to do that. He went 201, but we're trying to get Don back out to the track. I was actually on the Sun with that. It was Don's great nephew, Chris Garlitz, his brother's grandson, who's basically looking to bring the Garlitz name back into drag racing to do that. And I talked to him about, you know, don't try to kind of repeat where we were in the past with Nitro. If you look into the future where electrification, where Don's trying to push it, you can come in on the ground floor of this change to do that. And he's kind of, you know, he's a young guy, 26-year-old, got a 6-year-old son, and wants to get into the racing thing. And now is the time to start to look at how this change is evolving and doing that. So a lot of cool things happening, trying to set some records. You saw, like in Pikes Peak, they set a record going up the hill with a Model S Plaid. They didn't make it all the way to the top, and that wasn't because of them. It was too cold, I guess. So they closed it at like 6.75 miles. They didn't run all the way up the hill to do that. So it's a great, exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah.
You were racing, what was that, Fusion, a Ford Fusion?
I have a Ford C-Max Energy is what I ride. Yes, it's a 14,000 consistent car in a bracket racing. And I got tired of listening to all my Mustang friends when I kind of went to the dark side and they ragged on me in 2014, which was really the end of Fun Ford weekend when they tried to relaunch it. And at Baytown, and I said, okay, fine, I'll put my money on the table and in the foot brake class, and I went out and won. So I haven't lost. I've only beat myself in the bracket racing thing, which basically means, you know, how right you're trying to be on the number for who you're racing to do that. But electric cars are very competitive. Internal combustion engine guys don't like it. They don't like ice. The ice guys don't like the electric guys. Okay. And really, we don't cheat. We do that. There's just, it's a mathematical. There's less variables in the equation than we deal with, right? We're not looking at air, fuel mixtures and everything else. We're just looking at, as we call it, the wind. You're pretty close. The wind, the biggest factors are the wind, and we'll call it maybe the coefficient of stiction, as we call it, which is the adhesion to the track surface, not to spin the tires. But most of these cars will have launch control and everything else in them now. And once you learn traction control to do that, you can turn traction control on to do that, which will slow you down. But you know, if you're trying to run a good number, it does that. So a lot of cool things happening around here to do that. Hope probably in the next, I'll keep you all in the loop in the next couple weeks to do that.
Yeah, the whole science of everything with the stiction and when
Well,
you
it's
get
wind.
traction and
It's like this. Which way is the wind blowing for what's going to slow you? You're trying to run a number. It's not necessarily as fast as the car can go to do that. But now we're seeing the performance in the racing, and obviously like you said, people looking forward business models. Obviously, you know, you put a dial type rotary phone in front of somebody and they stare at it like, what's this? How does it work, right? You know, I remember when we had party lines, you pick up the phone and somebody was on the phone when you were there. Things are changing, but obviously you're seeing like the dealer models. The dealers have to be experienced in doing that. But obviously the weakest link in the dealer side is the training that needs to go with the dealers and the service techs. Where it really happens, like, I'm gonna forget his first name, the evangelist guy. Buzz. I spent a bunch of time. I was actually when Ford ran that thing, when Ford said that the cost of the F-150 Lightning is going to start at under $40,000, and we were all like, "What?" That was like they just about, you know, that's like Lordstown scrambling. They didn't shoot one across the bow. They just stuck one right in the center of the ship and said, "Come on. You know, bring it on if you're going to do it." Because obviously a purely electric vehicle is a lot simpler with a lot less moving parts, which why it can be cheaper with the battery infrastructure. But it's fun to, you know, like anything in racing, when you're trying to go fast, you're trying to find the coolest stuff that's out there to do that. And obviously people now we're actually seeing, since obviously a Tesla, we'll use an example, the big motor out of the back of a Tesla, the high horsepower motor, okay, it makes so much, you know, 400 in its real version, but with a hack controller and do that, you get 800 horsepower out of that.
Oh, really? Double the horsepower?
You can get 800 horsepower intermittent duty out of a large Tesla motor. And that's all because now we have the controller to run it, to be able to do that, all the hack stuff. And you're seeing these guys actually build conversions, or we call them E-rods right now, using the cheapest way to do it right now. If you want to go that way, it's probably with a big Tesla motor. To do that, and even Tesla battery packs after pack. I mean, he's running a Tesla battery pack in his Datsun, right? Watson, the Datsun or whatever. Is that it? Okay, yeah, to do that. So it's how we can do the cool things to do that. And now it's a fun time. You know, that's what we used to do when I was a kid. You know, you could buy a bunch of parts, throw things together, and go fast.
Yeah.
Now we can do that again, and it's actually the prices have come down, and the technology is really there, and the market's changing dramatically. So anybody got any questions?
Yeah, what are you driving these days? You still driving your C-Max?
Yeah, well, there's a voice. I drive my C-Max Energy as my daily driver. I have 203,000 miles on it with my original brake pads and rotors. We're going to start a poll to see how far they go. I'm going to run them until they hit metal and make business card holders out of them. I have a Mach-E GT Performance Edition on order in space white. With everything optioned in it. Okay. The only thing I don't want is a glass roof, but you can't get it without it. But now we've solved that problem, that we're going to work on designing for you people that want to do things, designing the carbon fiber replacement. So if you ever break your glass top and want to go right, you can put a carbon fiber roof on your Mustang Mach-E, which is even better because you take the weight off of the top and it's even going to handle better.
Oh, so much weight. True. Robert?
Yeah, you mentioned that the animosity between the ICE and the EV crowd. Has any of the ICE crowd looked into like EVs for their own personal use? Are they open to that? Like,
It's a battle and a conversation we have to have, but if you give me the car in about 30 minutes, I can convert about 90% of them. And if they're totally against it and they'll never go that way, I talk to them. If you're going to make horsepower, you got cubic inches, you've got boost. If you go to boost, you have a turbocharger, right? A supercharger, or you put nitrous in a bottle, right? To get more oxygen, right? So if you're going with boost, you do it with a centrifugal supercharger, a root supercharger, or a turbocharger. Well, obviously, why don't you electrify those three components and then you take away parasitic drag and you get more root boost? You don't take horsepower away from the motor, which is why the way a Formula One car works. So you'll see it where you have electric superchargers, electric turbochargers that work in conjunction. The advantage of a turbocharger is a turbocharger, when it's running under boost on the turbo from the exhaust, the motor on the turbocharger actually goes into a regenerative state and becomes a generator like a Formula One car. So now you take the exhaust to make power for charging batteries, which is how a Formula One car works.
so I went to work in the Exxon refinery in Baytown. I actually saw a Tesla right inside the refinery. So it's like, okay, maybe it's you're trying to.
No, you're seeing it, you're seeing it how that works to do that. The whole advantage is obviously you look at like Ford section and people were talking about, we'll have a grid conversation of being ready when we want to do that one time with a whiteboard in here. We can all talk about that. But the ability, if we have 20 million electric vehicles in the US that are grid tied on a bidirectional charging system, we solve our problem, okay? We don't have, the whole system will have a UPS built into it for doing that to work, okay? That is, electric vehicles are not the enemy of the grid. Electric vehicles are a solution to the grid because they are stored energy. Just like even in Hawaii, they have too much solar to have their grid handle solar the right way. They have to constrain it because the distribution network can't handle that. So how do you solve that? If you park your car at home during the day, you charge it with your solar. If you're not home during the day, you have a power wall of batteries in there to charge your batteries up on your solar. And then you get home and you charge it at night a little bit. And then when power's cheap at night, if they go to theirs is different, okay, because they don't have a high wind component. They generate a lot of stuff with oil, or obviously the solution in Hawaii is geothermal, large scale geothermal. You're sitting on a volcano, you might as well get free energy, right? To do that, but it's the solution. People don't look at that. It's not, EVs aren't the enemy. EVs are actually the solution, because the EV is a mobile energy storage solution, or mess as I call it, right? It's a great mess, okay? Because it's deployable, it's movable. We can get large scale with trucks to do things and 18-wheelers down to your car to do that. I mean, the new Ford F-150 has bidirectional charging built into it automatically. It's not a UPS where the lights won't go. You won't see it now, but your lights will go out, open transition, your lights will come back on and run by your vehicle. And then they'll go back automatically to do that. So that's where a car becomes an appliance. It's a whole lot more than just for transportation. It's your ultimate battery. I mean, look how many cell phones can we run off of an F-150 light? That's a good question to do that, right? To do that. So it is this solution, and I think everybody understands that. And obviously a company like CenterPoint, Texas is unique. Our generation is separate than our distribution network, right? So how does CenterPoint makes money? As long as they're moving and fill wire. If you're running your house off yourself, CenterPoint doesn't make any money to do that. So how can they monetize that? Well, they monetize that is real easy. In a microgrid situation where you have that, they don't have to put the money for the last mile, right? The more EVs we have, they don't have to increase their infrastructure, and what they can handle can go up exponentially by having all that stored energy at the house. They don't need a bigger transformer. That last mile, they don't need to put $1 into, other than the communication to work on it. They can build the high lines to do that. It changes the whole distribution. Like you said, that's the biggest problem in Hawaii with electric vehicles and solar, is not that they can't generate power, that you can't distribute that much power through the network to where it needs to go. We can talk about hours. I mean, we're going to have a good grid discussion about the real world and my real job to do that. But they are, EVs aren't the enemy. EVs are the solution. You know, because in Texas it's great because we have more wind at night than we can use.
Right.
Okay, and you can't, can you store energy? How do you store it? You store it in a battery, compressed air, or what do you do?
All
You know,
right.
how do you do that?
Thanks a lot, Keith. We'll have you talk some more.
I can talk for hours. So anybody feel free to call me.
We've already run over time here. I don't
I'm
know.
good.
Keep on
Has
doing
everybody
it.
signed this? Attendance is half the grade.
Enjoy the rain when run fast when you go to your car.
Oh, is it raining out there? Yeah, it's kind of.
Well, I heard it and then I looked at the radar. I think that low pressure system's
Go to pluginamerica.org and you see the counter.
Okay, I'll do that in just a second. So just to let everybody know, we've switched to the second Thursday, so all of you that saw email. So no longer first Thursday, it's second Thursday. That way we're avoiding holidays and things like that. So, and I'll go to that website. John, if you got a second, I want to ask you a question too.
Have you already signed in?
Yes.
All right, so Robert, what site are we going to?
Pluginamerica.org.
Pluginamerica.org, okay.
I do that every day to watch the things go round and round.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everything out.
Okay, the counter.
You just go down a little bit. Yeah, it's just in the center of the page.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, we're almost 2 billion.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Glad to see that. So, all right, let me. Bye, everybody.